Hey there, YouTubers. Welcome to another one of my essentially unscripted, extemporaneous, impromptu talks on YouTube. Usually shorter than a TED Talk, but not always. This one I expect will be. I'm ending the new year with a tribute to the reptile. There is a python in this room, a real one, my daughter's pet, which we feed and on the whole, I think we need to overcome any bigotry we have towards various species. That's something to keep working on as humans. And since they give reptilians in mythology, the superstitions and the religions, some of them, the cults, they give the reptilians a lot of power, a lot of credit for running the world. And I think that means that those who are reptilians should use that power wisely for world peace. So, reptilians for peace, reptilians for peace. In contrast to what I call the law cap directors, movie directors of another age, an older age, kind of getting to be geezers now, and they still want to win the Cold War. They don't understand what's been going on. They didn't predict the breakup of the USSR, and they mistook that for, quote, winning the Cold War. And then it became a matter of punishing all those who had been defiant. This is what supposed victors want to do when they think they finally achieved their victory, is punish those who defied them. And what they want to do is do that in the name of the United States of America. And what we're doing is making that increasingly difficult for them to claim so that the USA doesn't go down in history in infamy. Better it not exist than be in the control of such nefarious evildoers. They're really just more or less ignorant of history. Now, going to 1997 in my time tunnel here, this is way back when Terry Bristol organized the Oregon Math Summit, which is memorialized here at the Oregon State University website. We got a lot of heavy hitters into the same venue. I was not a heavy hitter. I was just somebody who hung out and had my own sort of, I'd already been to into the Bucky Fuller stuff by by then. Like I started diving into synergetics, which I'm about to talk about again, in the 1980s. Not while I was at Princeton, which I could have done, given synergetics came out in 75. I was class of 1980 at Princeton, but let's say sometime in 80s, early 80s, when I was in Jersey City, I started studying the Bucky stuff and started making contacts. I started writing letters, I started reaching out. I started to make a name for myself, for better or for worse. So that's my personal history. Now, Noel Murphy, he's got his own time tunnel, and I've never talked to him or communicated that I can remember, but he's got a lot of talking heads and interesting footage bundled up in his, I would say, archive. And out of that, he writes various scripts. Now, an older one, this is what confuses people maybe, is called Bucky, A Fuller Future. And I watched that a few days ago for the first time. And then there's a new recut called Bucky 2, I think. So I reviewed the older one, A Fuller Future. And I think mostly I said, I bet there's going to be more in the next one. And I had a couple criticisms, like, what about Black Mountain College? That sure was important in Bucky's career. And what about the specifics around the domes? Like, I really like telling the story of the Afghanistan dome, the Kabul dome. Some people say Kabul, but whatever. The dome then, and then the Moscow dome. These are great stories even in this day and age when some people, these stooges here, are still trying to fight the Cold War in the same terms that they remember from, I don't know, World War II. They're just trying to live out their father's dreams, I guess. You must punish defiance. I don't know what the problem is. Anyway, This newer Bucky film is coming out today, or maybe tonight, January 1st, New Year's. It'll be available easily for free, I believe. This was a pre-cut that we got to see on Trim Tab Book Club, not give out the location of it or anything. But to my surprise, or not surprise so much as I was, I was pleased that exactly those criticisms I had about the first cut or earlier cut are addressed here. In other words, the domes are taken up individually. The house is taken up, the car is taken up, all the inventions are taken up, which is why it's almost 2 hours long. And this, again, is not the final cut that's going to be released today or tomorrow. So I'm just, quickly flashing through. Nothing that I want to reveal or not reveal ahead of time. Just give you a sense that there is a big substantive film here, which I will turn the sound off. This building is especially impressive. This one, David Koski went to visit, I recall. Well, that's the Climatron there, isn't it? No, that's the one going up in Hawaii. Right, there's so many, right? I was starting with, this is the Union Tank Car Dome, but the history of each one gets spelled out more, as I was saying. And so it really, in the Dymaxion house, it really feels like a very substantive film, and so I'm excited that this is going out to the world. I think it's going to complement what we've been doing around here, which is what? I'll scroll you in. Martian Math. This is my final topic, partly because we're looking at a next version of a BFI website, and for other reasons as well. I took a Martian Math page already on GitHub and expanded it out to really be more overtly and directly conversation about synergetics. And I start with a simple summary of what it is in terms of publications and who worked on it. Just a very quick entry point would be the books themselves, right? And then I dive into the actual content of synergetics to some level. I didn't want to make this a super long article. And I'm doing the editing myself. The great thing about version control is I can put on my editor hat later and I can see the weaknesses. I don't always write it the best way the first time for sure. And it does mature over time and it gets better with time. So I've been adding to it pretty steadily for the last couple weeks, or maybe just a week by now. And it has gotten a lot better, and the material would be stuff that you're all familiar with if you've watched this channel at all, really, or much, okay? So the concentric hierarchy, for example. But what I like about this particular version is I really cleaned up the S and E module relationships to where those really stand out clearly. So even if you don't know Python or are not a computer coder, if you let your eye rove over this stuff, you start to learn Python and you start to appreciate the simplicity of this volumes table, which I say in my assessment. So we go through synergetics and then I end up with my assessment, and I get down to where Bucky himself thought that this stuff would be suppressed. Because the great tragedy directors are more interested in some kind of war in Ukraine, if they're lucky, prove that Raytheon is God or whatever, some stupidity, right? So we don't get to the scholarly stuff. So we make sure people out there who are listening understand that this is American philosophy. We can trace it back directly to the Transcendentalists. And it's not Marxism, but even if it were, it's not Malthusian, and it's not feeding the flames of the Cold War in this, or if anything, it's making the Cold War colder. So cold that we notice the public is not at all interested in the Ukraine stories, and there's no momentum building for any kind of major conflict there, because those who want to fan the flames are finding they no longer have really any levers of power. is what I would say. So we develop in our usual dashboard, what I call the high school of tomorrow sort of interface or place where we hang out a lot is called Jupyter Notebook, right? So that's where the original of some of these writings matures and where I can run the actual code. I can also embed videos, and then when you see it on GitHub, you realize you can clone it yourself, you can download it, and you can start your own teaching site. Like what we need most of all here, as you can tell from all these efforts, is a bigger army, right? So consider this kind of a recruiting video. We could use more help here. Join the Americans, okay? Have fun. By Americans, I mean all the whole Western Hemisphere. Let's like Mexico and everything. Let's all stand up for peace and prosperity and all that. That's the West, and then the East is like Europe and Russia and China, right? The other continent over there. So let's change the meaning of East and West. West is just the Americas, and East is everything else. How about that? Let's to confuse things a little. Okay, Happy New Year, and enjoy the rest of your year, however many hours you have left in 2021. We'll see you again in 2022.